So there's possibly some big news in the background of Netflix business stuff. I mean, there's a genuine chance based on this that Netflix is about to seriously step up their animation division. As on the back end of things, they have just nabbed themselves the former head of Disney Animation Vancouver, Amir Nasrabadi, as their new chief operating officer. And I feel like that's not a small move. For a while now, it's not gone unnoticed that Netflix have made some serious waves with their animation efforts. They have won the Best Animated Feature Oscar, lest we forget. Granted, a lot of them are either Netflix distributing the work of other studios, or outsourcing to other studios for their own projects, so we can't give them too much credit here. But is this a sign that they are looking to become more self-sufficient in the animation department? Whereas DreamWorks was a successful internal studio that has now been restructured around outsourcing and now are apparently accepting projects like the goddamn Cocomelon movie, Netflix at least have started building their animation portfolio with this model, creating a diverse palette of acclaimed projects. And some gunk too. As with Netflix's originals in general, there is a lot of fluff in their canon. I'm talking Wish Dragon, and basically anytime they've worked with Nickelodeon outside of the Plankton movie. But then you have some truly great movies. I think Klaus was the first movie that really sent up the first flare. Sorry I'm mentioning it in June of all months, but it's relevant. No one expected such a fresh animated movie from them about Santa. Partially because not enough people have actually seen After Christmas, but hey, that's another story. But all of a sudden, we got this movie that, whilst using computer animation, went back to that traditional classic animation look that we'd had over a decade of big studios saying it wasn't viable anymore. When clearly it was pretty viable here, creating a world that seamlessly went from cold to warm with its color palettes, character designs that harken back to classic animation, whilst doing its own thing as well, creating a distinctly original and emotionally poignant rendition of the Santa mythology. And this was on Netflix? The other project that really comes to mind is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. This time, a complete dive into stop-motion animation. And completely distinct in its style too, particularly away from Aardman. I mean, maybe it is a bit Laika Studios, but nonetheless, this was a stunning and often pretty dark telling of the classic story. Or in other words, more accurate to the spirit of the narrative. Just in case the donkey transformation in the old Disney one wasn't enough. Just another reminder, by the way, that the abducted children subplot in that movie is never resolved. This took another leap and took the lead from the guy making it, which, believe it or not, led to a good movie. Certainly the best of the 3 or 4 Pinocchios we got that year, by a long shot. Yeah, it was the only good one, let's not kid ourselves. And this time, it paid off significantly, with the movie winning the Oscar for Best Animated Feature. I think this was the point that Netflix no longer became a dabbler in animation, and the beginnings of their animated program became a concrete part of their business. Hey, Warner Brothers, you listening to this? Other than that one Cat in the Hat movie you've decided to do? Of course, once again, you do have to acknowledge that this is Netflix-produced stuff that other smaller studios have made. But to be fair, it wasn't like I expected that Netflix just had a stop-motion studio in their offices ready to make Pinocchio with. And then the external animation studios they have collaborated with has to be factored in too. Aardman, Sony Animation, DreamWorks, and the exciting new kids on the block with Locksmith Animation too. With another Christmas movie, believe it or not. Man, Netflix loves Christmas. I've spoken at length about my interest in Locksmith and what they've been up to. And that Christmas was just another display of truly how much potential they have. We got a charming Christmas movie with really nice looking animation, and yet I feel like that's just the start of what they could be capable of. And then you have the Aardman collaborations. That was a big move. Admittedly, I wasn't a huge fan of how what they wanted from Aardman was just legacy titles to their biggest IPs. Particularly with Chicken Run 2, that wasn't asking for a sequel and it ended up not being that good because of it. You know, it's just weird Aardman being the IP sequel studio for Netflix in a way. I mean, I guess you have the SpongeBob as the worst offender there, really. But I need an emotional break from the travesties going on with that today. Hello there. You made it to the halfway mark of this video, so come subscribe now that you're 50% through. I'll try my best to keep up with any other animated movie news, like businessmen in the background apparently. So join along if you're interested. And let's get back to the second half of the video. Cheers. The Sandy Cheeks movie was one of the worst films of the past year. Thank you for that one, Netflix. Sort of. Sony Animation had Netflix swooping in when Mitchells vs. Machines almost got buried by the pandemic. I mean, they were advertising it as connected at the time, so my guess would have been it flopped anyway. It's one of those situations where a movie actually benefited from being dumped on Netflix, actually. As for DreamWorks, they've had a really interesting relationship here. Predominantly, it's been spin-off series that I haven't really heard much complaints about, which only makes Peacock's Megamind disaster all the more noteworthy. Like, there was a solid 10 years to look back on how to make these series done well, But the thing I think is most relevant here, at least in the topic of DreamWorks and Netflix combined with movies, is Orion and the Dark, which was a particularly experimental movie for DreamWorks. And whilst it wasn't perfect, it was a brave new project to try and do, and is definitely a unique beast to itself. It's a shame DreamWorks didn't fill this one for theaters, but I guess I get it, having seen it. And now we come up to here. A former head of Disney Animation is taking over as the big boss. And I do wonder whether the fact that he was from the Vancouver branch is significant to the fact that Netflix's animated stuff is largely produced by Sony Imageworks, also in Canada. And just a reminder, that's where Sony Animation, of course, has their stuff produced, and now, of course, DreamWorks as well. All coming from the same place. Yay, everything's coming from the same place these days. Also interesting that rather than outsourcing to Canada like the rest, Disney just built their own studio there. But I do think, overall, this is a huge step for Netflix in adding a new potential layer of quality control. Because boy do they need it. Honestly, it's impressive that their good stuff stands out more than other studios, because there is so much bad to go around. I really need to do a deep dive into some of these god-awful movies lurking at the bottom of the Netflix rabbit hole at some point. It makes me feel bad sometimes that we give Pixar such a hard time, because they have the reverse, where the bad stuff is what actually stands out. Pixar's a set of Christmas lights with a couple bulbs out, whilst Netflix is a dark mine with a few gems sticking out, you know? Sticking to the Christmas imagery for this wonderful June video. Regardless, it would be nice to see their batting average improve, and bringing this guy on may very well be a big step towards that I'm all for. The one thing I will lament though is that any project made under this studio is, by its very existence, just going on Netflix. The top bosses, despite having some very successful experiments in limited releases, just don't want to support the theaters. They want people to stay home and watch Netflix, even though they will be making more money releasing these movies theatrically, particularly when they're spending so much money on them. That terrible looking Electric State movie was their most expensive movie to do, yet it made no individual return because it was just another panel on the home screen. But they are apparently going to make an exception for Greta Gerwig's new Narnia movie, so we'll see how that goes. As for more animation from Netflix, we have yet another entirely different project in the form of K-pop Demon Hunters coming soon. We also have adaptations of Roald Dahl's The Twits coming up, in collaboration with Dogman alumni Jellyfish Pictures, which aren't a thing anymore, I'm pretty sure. As we reported a couple months back, they went bankrupt after years in operation, which I suspected the outsourcing contributed to, so. John Cleese worked on this Twit story though, so we'll see how that goes. And then there's In Your Dreams starring Simu Liu, in a movie about two kids going on a dream adventure to find the Sandman. Why? Because they want him to grant their wish to save their parents' marriage. Which interests me particularly. It's a really cool sounding idea, so it'll be interesting to see how that turns out. They have some fascinating sounding projects in the works. Again, all very different, and I'm personally all for it. Diverse projects with no consistent style, unlike every other major studio? Yeah, that sounds great to me. I would love to see more great animation from Netflix. It's just a shame that I'll never be able to see it in cinemas. But either way, this is all bounced off of the back of some background news of some businessman getting involved. But hopefully it leads to all sorts of potential for animation going forwards. I, at the very least, are going to be keeping an eye and likely doing a review on all of these upcoming projects. So I'll let you know how things go over the months. But for now, my name's been Daz. Thank you very much for reaching the end of this video. Do tell me your thoughts on Netflix animation. What's your favorite project of recent years, or what would you like them to do next? I'd love to hear all your thoughts and more, and I shall see you all in a little bit. Cheerio!